Mike has written, could the panel talk about the Republicans' agenda? A lot of things they promised, such as repeal of the 14th and 17th Amendments, repealing of health care, balanced budget, holding the debt ceiling. Lisa, take a shot at that. What do you expect to actually come of some of those agenda items?
Well, one thing I know a lot of Republicans are talking about trying to do at least is repealing the health care law that was passed, of course, last session. I think that's going to be awfully hard, if not impossible to do, because Obama, of course, is not going to, he's going to veto, I would imagine, the idea of repealing one of his own strongest legislative accomplishments. There's a question.
Has virtually, he's right. He's going to.
He's not going to allow that.
There's no vote to, not enough votes to override
Democrats
it.
And in the
Senate,
yeah, Democrats still control the Senate, so it's not going to happen.
But maybe in the states, Byron.
I think the thing to do if you're looking at Republican agenda in the House, where they do have control, they didn't run on repealing the 14th or the 17th or any other amendment. Look at the Pledge to America. This document that they rolled out a few weeks before the election talks about cutting government spending to pre-stimulus, pre-bailout levels, cap on discretionary spending, cap on cut Congress's budget, get rid of TARP once and for all, repeal Obamacare, medical liability reform, read the bill, advance word of legislative language, all of this stuff. Now, it may seem boilerplate to a lot of people, and it may have been criticized a lot when it came out, but they actually take this stuff seriously, so they are going to try to enact what they said they would do before they got elected.
Is there any chance that they or anyone else can move toward a balanced budget?
Well, if by moving toward a balanced budget you mean reducing the deficit more, yes.
Well, not from 1.4 to 1.2 trillion, but from 1.
Although that would be an improvement.
Well, of course it would, but if we want to get serious,
at the same time, their number one agenda item, I think by far, is extending tax cuts on the wealthy, which will add close to $1 trillion to the deficit. So if they're talking about cutting $100 billion from discretionary spending, meaning environmental regulations, education, mine safety, and all that stuff, but yet they're adding $900 million in terms of tax cuts for the well-to-do. Their deficit promises are not that serious, and if they want to go after it, Dick Armey sent out a memo. He's sort of one of the establishment Washingtonians who is trying to lead the Tea Party movement, saying that the first order of business really should be repealing health care in its entirety. Are they really going to go out there and say we're going to allow companies to go back to pre-existing conditions? We're going to take kids who are on parents' plans up to the age of 26 now and rip them out of those plans?
Byron York, a quick response, and then I want to come over to Lisa.
Well, a couple of things. One, I would advise our listeners to go to something called Historical Tables of the U.S. Budget. It's published by the Office of Management and Budget. You'll see that between 2007 and 2010, federal spending went from $2.7 trillion to $3.7 trillion. Before, it went up about 120, 150 billion a year, but then it just zoomed up there. So the idea of restoring spending to those levels is not at all unreasonable. And by the way, the federal budget deficit in 2007 was $160 billion. That's with Bush tax cuts.
Lisa Laren, let me ask you about the tax cuts to start with, okay? Because some of the first signals from the White House this last week after the election revolved around this tax cut package.
Right.
You're from Bloomberg News. You track these things closely. What are you seeing by way of signals? What do you read from them?
I think the White House has signaled that they could be happy with a one-year extension of upper incomes as long as the middle-class tax cuts were made permanent. A lot of people think that this will get done during the lame duck session. Of course, all the rates go up on January 1st if nothing happens. I just see that I find that hard to imagine. I don't see the politics as such really coming together in a way that could actually get some kind of sustainable solution to the tax cuts. So
what happens with this matters because if nothing is done by the end of the year, everybody sees their tax rates go up to some extent, and if you're thinking about the impact on the economy, wow.
But it actually could be done in the next session, quick off the bat, made retroactive. It's better if they do it beforehand, but it's not the end of the game.
Is that what you expect?
They don't. I think it's 50-50 whether they're going to work this out or not.
I think Republicans are going to get what they want on this because a number of Democrats had been caving before the election about if not making them permanent, extending all of them for, say, 3 years.
I think we heard this last week, too, the shot that will be heard round the next election then, because if on this tax hike issue, depending on how you see it, the solution is to kick the can down the road 2 years. Well, guess what 2 years from now
Right.
is?
Right.
Right? So aren't we already framing the next presidential election with this tax issue?
I don't know why
Right.
Democrats didn't say they were going to prevent the Bush tax increases, because that was built into the Bush tax cuts, that they would indeed just last 10 years. But the fight is going to be over making them permanent. I think in terms of extending them for, say, 3 years, Republicans are just going to win on that.